Hey everyone, let's talk about sensory processing. What is sensory processing? Sensory processing is an automatic neurological process, and it involves your body taking in sensory input, sending it to your central nervous system, and inside of your brain, that sensory input gets organized, and then your body forms a response. And this is a pretty extensive process, considering that it happens all the time with a lot of different sensory inputs. And we actually have 8 senses. So there's the 5 that you probably know about: sight, smell, touch, hearing, and taste, plus 3 more. We have a proprioception system, a vestibular system, and an interoception system. Okay, so let's talk about these. Proprioceptive input. This is what tells you where your body is at in space. So if I said, close your eyes and take your index finger and touch your nose. Okay, now open up your eyes. How were you able to do that? It is because of your proprioception system successfully at work, telling your brain where your body is at in the air. Our vestibular system, this is housed in our inner ear. Fun fact. And it tells you about head orientation and gravity related information. Swinging is something that activates the vestibular system. And then interoception, this is what tells us about what's going on the inside of our body. So, how do we know when we have to use the bathroom? It's because of our interoception system, or how we're feeling. Are we feeling anxious or are we feeling peaceful? Are we feeling hungry or are we feeling not hungry? Those are some examples of what our interoception system tells us. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, cool, but why is this important for me to know about in relation to helping individuals with disability participate in church? It's because we all, you, me, all God's children, we all have sensory preferences, and sometimes these sensory preferences can impact our ability to successfully participate, successfully learn, successfully engage. So that's why it's important to know about them. And additionally, some of us have sensory processing disorder, and it's believed to impact 1 in 20 children. It is more common in children with ASD, ADHD, Fragile X syndrome. This is not an official DSM-5 diagnosis. Sensory processing disorder, someone has this whenever they have difficulty in their daily life due to their difficulty with processing sensory input. And we might see some different areas that one might have difficulty in as a result of having SPD. These might include emotional regulation, behavioral learning, and motor function difficulties. So, if someone has sensory processing disorder, and honestly, we all have sensory preferences. And so, with these sensory preferences, we might crave certain inputs. So, we might seek out certain inputs to help our body feel regulated. We might be hypersensitive to some inputs, which means that it only takes a little bit for us to feel like it is a lot of that input. And so, if we're really hypersensitive to an input that we're experiencing, that might make us feel a little dysregulated. Someone might be hyposensitive to some inputs, which means that it takes more of that sensory input for them to really feel that it's there. We might be unable to detect differences in some inputs. So, an example of this would be being unable to tell whenever I have to use the bathroom right now. I have to go right now versus I could wait. I think I could wait to use the bathroom. Having difficulty with motor tasks, that is a way that sensory processing disorder can manifest. Okay, I wanted to talk about decreased sound tolerance because it's estimated that 50 to 70% of people with autism have experienced decreased sound tolerance at a certain point or throughout their lifetime. And this could be hearing everyday sounds as loud and or painful, having an extreme adverse reaction to a specific sound, or having a specific fear of hearing one sound. It's important to respect if someone is having an adverse reaction to a sound, respecting that and figuring out a way to support them in that. Maybe it's giving them a break. Maybe it is providing them with a warning before we go into the loud gym and letting them know it's going to be loud. Maybe it's offering noise reducing headphones. those are just some suggestions, but trying to figure out a way to support them to ensure that the sound that we're adverse to is not going to negatively impact our ability to successfully participate in church. Oops, a timer. Okay, give time for processing. If we are talking to someone, sometimes some friends, they might need more time to process what we're saying, and that's fine. We just have to give them the time to process. And instinctually, I feel that some people, and this was me before I learned about how it's so important to give people time to process and how that can really help the conversation and your relationship with them and their ability to engage with you and my ability to engage with them. But I learned before I learned, I would be tempted to rephrase what I was saying because I didn't want them to feel awkward and I wanted to support them. I thought it was helping to rephrase the question. So, for example, how old are you? Oh, what grade are you in? Are you in seventh? What school do you go to? Were you born in the fall? So, that's me rephrasing and just trying to keep the conversation going. But instead, maybe it would be better for me to go, how old are you? You're 12? That's awesome. I'm 23. So that's an example of giving someone time to process. Okay, so we talked about proprioception earlier and what that is. So quick review, that is our system that lets us know where our body is at in space. And so typically, proprioceptive input is typically, not always, but it's typically calming. And it typically helps our bodies and brains be ready to learn and be engaged and listen. And so giving our friends opportunity to get their wiggles out is actually, yes, backed by science, letting them get movement in. So we get that proprioception input from movement as well as from deep pressure. So deep pressure examples of that would be utilizing a weighted blanket, no more than 10% of the student's body weight and with written parent permission, but utilizing a weighted blanket or offering one. Additionally, another example would be like, okay, everybody, let's give ourselves a bear hug. Yay, squeeze, 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 yay, good bear hugs. That's an example because we're getting that deep pressure. This is an activity that I developed that is a praise activity. And so with this, there's movement that you're doing throughout this activity, and it's made intentionally with giving some proprioception input all throughout the body while you complete this praise activity. Let's talk about some more strategies to support someone with sensory processing disorder, providing opportunities for proprioceptive input. So just like we talked about earlier, movement or deep pressure. An example of movement would be like, let's do some bunny hops, or putting in movement into the lesson. That's always great. Do not mistake that someone has to be making eye contact with you to be listening, because they don't have to be making eye contact with you to be listening. And for some people, eye contact is a very intense experience and it's difficult to maintain and listen at the same time. So it's awesome to just never force someone to make eye contact. And that way, hopefully, they'll be able to listen a little bit better, especially if that's something that they don't enjoy doing. Visual schedules and preparing for change in the schedule. So someone might think, why in the world would visual schedules help someone with sensory processing disorder? Well, think about all of the changes that are included in transitioning from one room to another. We are going to have different smells, different sounds, different lights, different people, different feelings, different chairs, different everything. So it's important to give people an opportunity to prepare for those changes, and it can help their sensory systems be ready for that transition. Additionally, we want to give our friends warnings before transitions. So saying something like, okay, in 2 minutes, it will be time to clean up. your craft. If you are not finished, you can take it home. So that's giving that time warning and also helping them know that if they're not finished, it's okay. They can finish it at home. They don't have to be done in 2 minutes. Having noise reducing headphones available, we talked about that earlier, and reducing the adverse input if possible. If it's possible for you to take away something that is impacting someone's ability to participate, yeah, let's go ahead and take it away. That's not always possible. And so sometimes we just have to kind of figure out the best way to support that friend and their ability to participate. Maybe it is offering them a couple of minutes in the hallway with trusted volunteers in the middle of children's church, and that really helps them. It just gives them what they need. Y'all figured that out, and now y'all do that every single Sunday, and everything works great. That's what they need. They just needed that break for 2 minutes. That's an example. Just figuring out, okay, what works for this person. Yeah. So what is my main takeaway about sensory processing today? I really don't want you all to feel overwhelmed, like, oh my goodness, I have to know everything about sensory processing and there's so much to know. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I am just trying to help you understand that there is a hidden world of sensory processing occurring in us all. And sometimes this hidden world impacts one's functioning in their daily life. And so when that functioning is impaired in one's time during church, we want to meet them with action-filled grace and understanding. And so that is my hope, that this educational portion of this presentation on sensory processing, it helps you understand, okay, there's this hidden world going on, and just understanding that that exists. And some support strategies for people who do have sensory processing disorder. Additionally, be willing to learn from the parent and their child about their child, because they know their child best. And so you can ask questions like, what frustrates so-and-so? Okay, what helps them feel better after they're frustrated? I want to make sure that I'm supporting them really well here. So that's just an example of a conversation that you could have with the parent in support of the child. And here are the references for this section, and I'll see you over in the next video.